3, 2, 1.
Here we go! Happy Freight Friday. Welcome to Matt Gaines Live. What is everybody drinking today? I have Hoegaarden. I don't know if anybody can see this because my lighting's a little funky, but I'm going to the Hoegaarden. I'm always drinking wheat beer. I can't really do IPAs and dark beer. I'm kind of a wimp. I'm also wearing an AC/DC shirt today. For those of you who are AC/DC fans like me, put your favorite song in the chat. We've got Matt Fink with us. I saw Amanda Miller. I saw Roger Moore. Ease of Delivery. I think I saw Final Exit Logistics. Oh, he's going to kill me for messing that up. So welcome, everybody. We've got a great show lined up for you. I have two experts, one on warehousing. I guess they both kind of dabble in each other's area too, but one on warehousing and the other on drayage, ports, chassis. Y'all saw the picture probably. I posted on social media. We're going to talk about that. But first, I would like to ask everybody to please give some mad love to my sponsors. We've got OTR Capital, my favorite factoring company. They don't play games. They're quick and they're easy. Brokers, you can use them too. Look for their link in my comments. Please give them love. If you need factoring, reach out to them. JJ Keller is the entity to go to, you guys. If you have questions about hours of service, anything trucking related, safety, they got it all. They're trucking people. Call them. Also, check out their website because they got great resources. And we have my favorite TMS, which is SwanLeap. I like them because they're flexible. They are already integrated with your shippers. You get 6 months of free use, Madtropolis. So click on the links in my posting. So let's get started. Let's bring our guests on. Happy Friday. I see Andrea's here. Grace is in the house. Tim Pool's in the house. Oh, we got a big crowd today, y'all. I thought I saw one of my favorite people. Jim Kneur. I love Jim Kneur. For those of you who do not know him, Ron Kane is here. I see who else we got. Jess is here, and Vitali's in the house. You guys, give Vitali some great love because he's in COVID lockdown in Canada. Poor guy. All right, let's get started. First, we've got two Brians. So one I'm going to call Brian Baskin, who's our warehouse expert from SEKO, and the other one is Brian Kempisty. Did I say it right?
Kempisty, but close. Close.
I keep trying. Okay, I'm going to call you BK then.
All right.
Oh,
Everybody calls me BK.
Okay, because you're one of my favorite people too, so I wanted to get your name right. If you asked Vitali, this is his favorite topic because when I first met him, I constantly messed up his first name, and I had to literally practice it, and he rolled his eyes at me constantly. So you have to be patient. All right, Brian Baskin, you are my SEKO guy. Warehousing is I think you are one of the best freight nerds I've ever met.
Thanks, geez.
And and I think everybody that watches this is freight nerds to begin with, but we haven't had a warehouse freight nerd on yet, so I'm very excited. Talk to me because I haven't had anybody on at all regarding warehousing. Talk to me about what's going on in the industry, some of your frustrations, some of your challenges. What do we all need to know? And keep in mind that many of us are just like shippers, truckers, and brokers in the full truckload LTL space, e-commerce space. So we're not as fluent in warehousing as you are.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I think, since you have a lot of truckers on, I think you all picking up on time would be really helpful if you all could get to the warehouses on time and get those loads off. But, it's... And
they're all like, well, if you didn't have such a line going into your warehouse and I'd have to wait around.
Pretty much. Yep. But, it's kind of a crazy time, honestly, in my 27 years in this business. I would say this is probably the craziest 6 months, 9-month period that I've seen. For a lot of reasons and across the country. It's not just in one market or it's pretty much across the world at this point. But, obviously COVID-19, I would put the thought out there, is it a bubble or is it a trend? Everyone's staying home and ordering online now has created a lot of shift in terms of the size package, the form factor. what happens inside of warehouses, how we're having to pick and ship product. There's a lot less bulk picks going on. So we're seeing a big shift there into e-com. So a lot of the building infrastructure that people don't have enough parking spots for employees when you're going up to e-com. So there's a lot of facility challenges. And couple that with the demand, you look at all the major cities, the industrial vacancy rates are probably sub 2%. And the costs are going up, of course, just like they are in trucking. So, and really anywhere in the ocean now too. So, I look at it as, is this going to be a COVID bubble? Or are we seeing a real shift here? Just like 9/11 happened, and pretty much domestic air freight was a big part of the supply chain before 9/11. After 9/11, when it was closed for 5 days, we saw everyone come off the air and go to ground. So are we going to see everyone stay in e-com right now? Or are we going to go back to DCs and is Best Buy going to stock their shelves next week? I don't know, because I'm kind of sick of going in there and there's nothing there to buy. So,
okay. What's interesting is, way kind of off topic, not really off topic though, is over Easter. This is the first Easter I've ever celebrated. I know it's a big deal for my people in Wisconsin. Y'all love Easter. But I went to like Target or something like that to just get a couple Easter things, because it's the first time my family and I were going to get together because people had been vaccinated and we wanted to celebrate a holiday together. And all the shelves were like empty. I couldn't even find food coloring to do the stupid egg thing. And I couldn't believe it. So I wonder, I'm with you. I'm wondering if it's a bubble, or is everybody like everybody's like, I'm appreciating holidays. I'm going to be shopping. The shelves are going to be empty. We're going to get used to it. Order it from Amazon. I don't know. What do you think, BK?
It might be a bubble, but it's going to be around for a while. I mean, people are not even close to being restocked. Automotive people can't get, supplies for the, building of the new cars. And I just moved into a new house and I have no dining room chairs, no island stools, and no couch because we ordered it in January and it's still not here.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, it's just a long time until this thing is going to get caught up. And I think the Amazon trend is going to continue. People are going to go shopping at some point. Maybe this is a little higher than it needs to be, but I think we're in a new normal, new world here.
I can see where you're coming from. I would throw out the thing that gets me going a little bit bubble-ish is we've got stimulus money that's come out to folks that they had. And you also have travel money. So we all were sitting at home for the last year and not spending travel money. So we had disposable income that was generally repurposed in other places. And on top of that, and I don't have statistics on this or anything, but I've kind of anecdotally heard stories of people getting stimulus money but holding back on rent payments, and there's a lot of local policy that's happened where you can't be evicted in California if you pay rent right now, and you don't have to pay your rent, but it's ballooning at the end. So I think we're going to see something in the real estate market and housing for sure that's going to come out and really has potential to be a ticking bomb. And so we'll see. I mean, incomes seem to be increasing again finally. And you have really hot real estate markets in a lot of the country right now in terms of residential real estate. So
true.
Housing market tends to drive the economy lately. So,
Zeke, could you put up Matt Fink's comment? I loved it. You all know I love my Matt Fink. Keep trying to get him to come on the show, but he refuses me. I wait by the phone. He says Amazon already started the e-commerce shift. Did they not? Pandemic certainly accelerated. But was that train was already rolling down the tracks? What do you guys think about that?
I think it's just rolling faster now. And after people, I was not really an Amazon guy before the pandemic, and I order shit on there all the time now, just because once you get used to it, it's easy.
So
it's easy.
And then totally you can reorder, you can subscribe. It's really nice.
They made the returns super easy. You don't even have to have a box anymore. You just take the thing back to UPS. They box it for you.
Yeah, or you can bring it to Kohl's. And then they just give it to them, and they take care of everything. Man, Amazon's smart. So okay, I get excited when we talk about e-commerce. It's one of my favorite topics. And I know we have some e-commerce shippers that are involved here as well. So before we jump on to another segment of this warehousing discussion, Brian, what are you telling your customers when they're like, I want to start up a new facility over here. I'm thinking of leasing warehousing, and they're talking to you about logistics. Like, what's going on in that space?
I think you had traditional supply chains where you were looking at final mile cost drives. It's a majority of the cost of a transaction, right? And so you have different clients that have different, I guess, lead time tolerances to their end customers. So depending on what those are, you have traditional DC models from 1, 2, 3, 6, whatever you're looking at. And there's another trend that's kind of happening now. In California for sure. I'm sure it's happening in other places, but the asset-based parcel guys are hitting limits now, and their capacity's out. And I mean, daily basis, trailers are not getting picked up. They don't have the capacity of trailers. They don't have the capacity of drivers to handle all the trailers getting picked up from sites. So, as you see that trend continue, it's going to start affecting lead times from a traditional 2 or 3 DC model. And I think you're going to start seeing a shift again, and Amazon's probably going to drive some of it again, where you're going to go back and have to start managing inventory in 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 places if you want to be tight lead time to your client. So I think you could definitely see the moving away, or maybe the addition to the asset-based parcel guys of the kind of haul on demand, like your Ubers, your drop-offs, your different companies like that are courier-based, app-based, work when you want to. You're kind of seeing a move away from the professionalization of delivery to where, hey, I can get my Postmates or my other stuff brought to my house for food. I think you're going to start seeing that for consumer goods as well, coming from e-com. I think people are caring less about the delivery experience in terms of who it is, just as long as they get their stuff and it's intact and it arrived on time. So
true.
I think you're going to see that continue to go.
You had spoken one time in our strategy session about, and I know you might have just also brought it up as well, but if you could just give us a little bit more detail. So parcel carriers, I think you were talking about decentralizing of pop-up networks and a capacity impact. I wrote this down in my notes, but what did you mean by all this? And what the heck is a pop-up network?
Well, I mean, again, a lot of times you have people with seasonal shipping patterns, right? So how well can you move from 3 inventory positions to 6 in peak season, right? So depending on what your peak season is. And, a lot of what we're seeing right now is shifts in peak seasons because there's no raw materials. All right. And so depending on what you're in, we do some business with outdoor companies that do outdoor seasons. So, the Midwest is getting warm again, although I heard it snowed this week. So, but it's getting warm again. So we're hearing of clients that are going to be out of inventory in early May because these shipments that were supposed to come in to fill the buffer in April, May are now pushed out to August. So, you have situation there. Are they going to miss retail season, et cetera? So how are they going to recover from that, right? So could we turn on pop-up networks in August, direct from Asia into more close to the client kind of distribution models that are temporary? Maybe they're 3 and 4 month models where you go from 3 year round and drop to 6. And then again, you're looking at that capacity of how to do the final mile cheaply because it's going to affect your earnings. So I think this next, as much as the last 12 months was kind of an adventure, I think the next 12 months is going to be equally. The recovery of the supply chain is going to be an equal adventure, and it's kind of uncharted waters at this point.
I feel the same too. Okay, to take a step back? Oh, I just noticed that Chandler's in the house, y'all, from Next Exit Logistics. Sorry, Chandler, I messed up the name in the beginning. So welcome to the party, Chandler. Neil is here. We got Emily. We got Matt. Okay, so Brian, to take a step back with the pop-up network. So what goes into, let's say I'm a shipper and I'm new, right? I'm growing really, really fast. And I'm like, Brian, I need a pop-up facility or network or whatever. What goes into that?
Manpower, I mean, it's as simple as hotspots in a warehouse. You could have just floor space in a warehouse, and most of the WMS applications now are web-based. So you just set up a new warehouse location. Now, integration.
How hard is it to get leasing? What do you want? What should I be leasing? Can I just look for a warehouse? The industrial
vacancy rates are, like I said, are tight. So you're not going to try and go into a long-term lease, but there's lots of people out there, and And we actually are seeing a lot of cooperation even between competitors now. So, Brand X lost a client that they have 100,000 feet open. Well, they don't want to carry the overhead. So now they'll sub it out to a competitor for 3 months, bring them in, at least have 3 months of revenue to offset that cost while they're trying to find a new project for that space. So you're seeing a lot of software applications come up that are more soft space kind of applications. So if I'm a trucking company and I got an extra 10,000 square feet, you go on there, you put in what your project is, and you can it'll match you to different people who are selling space, so to speak. So there's a lot of, I guess, commercialization of dead space, I would say, or unused space that allows you to find that quicker now. That in the past it used to be call a broker, find out who knew the guy, and you'd like be doing backside deals. But now it's more, you can do a web-based deal. There's I forget the name of the app, but warehousefreightspace.com. There's different ones out there you can look at and find temporary space as you need it.
How short term can these pop-ups be?
I mean, we've done the projects in a week. For a big week, we have 50 containers coming into a spot. We're going to cross-dock them and deliver them to a site. We've done distributions. I mean, so again, with Wi-Fi hotspots, web-based WMSs and portable printers, it's pretty easy to do. I see a question about integrations when setting up new locations. I would tell you, Benjamin, that is more of a function of design when you set up the original project. So if you're setting up, it's probably harder to add an SAP plant or an Oracle location than it is to change it in a WMS. So if you design your interface to where it's location-based and you can pop in new locations, or you can create, separate SLOCs or sub-locations in your ERP system, it's very easy to make that integration happen. Or we can just handle the existing integration and handle the shipping coming out of an LA warehouse that was there. You can route the orders to LA, and we can manage that on a sub-level basis and change where we're going with that. So there's kind of a right way to do it, and then there's like a quick way to do it. So a lot of that's manageable. So
Benjamin's question, because I was thinking about the same thing. So could you explain, because we have to back up for some people, could you explain what a WMS is? And then explain that with these, so silent like a TMS, like you guys have your WMS. And then the integration. So what if I use do you guys in warehousing, do you have like an older kind of clunky software that everybody, like a lot of people use that, like we have it in TMS, and BK knows what I'm talking about. Like we have some older things that people are like,
there's good, bad, and ugly in the TMS world.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm not saying that you guys have one, BK. I'm just saying you know what I'm talking about. Or Brian.
I've been in clients with wood paneled walls and the old dot matrix printers with the green bar paper that show me their inventory files. So yes, it's,
and they're like, look at my Excel sheet.
Yeah, right. No, I didn't even have Excel in that place.
WMS. I got Excel.
So
what do you do with us when we have old clunky stuff? What's the solution?
There's so many different ways to do integrations now, and they've gotten so much cleaner, especially with APIs. It really just, you could take everything from an Excel spreadsheet and turn it into an integration. So there's most of the WMS applications that are out there today have upload files. So you can just take an Excel spreadsheet, kind of format it a certain way and push it into the system. So there's a lot of different ways to go, with that type of an application. So there's really,
you don't worry too much if I'm like, we have a pop-up, but hey, Brian, I've got really let's be real, I got a real shit warehouse management software. I don't know how we're going to track everything coming and going in this pop-up. We're going to have to figure it out. And so you're telling me that you can jerry rig it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, you got something. Look, the absolute worst case scenario is you're going to have someone sitting there keying the data in the system and swivel chairing it. That's the absolute worst case scenario.
Yeah. Wait, who's Keith Winters? Is he your buddy?
Keith and I were founders at Crane Worldwide back in the past.
That's hilarious.
Hey Keith, how you doing, bud?
Don't go Star Wars on them, Mr. Baskin.
Yeah. I got Mr. Mentor right behind him, so.
So BK, do you have, I don't want to, you're going to be our chassis guy soon, and we're going to dive into that. But I know that you are in and out of warehouses, and you deal with all this stuff too. Is anything like, do you have any pop-ups going on in your world or anything?
We do no pop-ups, so that's not really our game. Our game is more transloading. So we get the ocean freight in the containers, transload it, and then expedite it to destination all over the country. Obviously, with the supply chain backups, ocean backups, automotive lines down, increased volume of 30% in ocean freight, everybody is transloading and expediting. So there is as Brian mentioned earlier, there's no space out there. I know in 3 separate markets in LA, Savannah, and Denver, we've made offers on space. Basically, they're saying this is how much we want for a lease. We're like, okay, send us the lease, we'll sign it. And it's crickets. So it's just very, very difficult to get real estate. And that is on the warehouse side, and it's also on the yard side. Like when you pull these containers out of the port, you have to store them somewhere because, in many instances, you have to have return appointments. So real estate in general, in our freight marketplace, whether you're doing warehousing, yard storage, drayage, whatever it might be, it's hard. It's just hard to get any of it. And like I said, in the last couple of weeks, 3 offers, no space.
Wow. Can I ask you both a question? Because this is like dumb lawyer moment, but has there been any like really creative solutions? Like, I'm just going to go freaking lease this big ass plot of land and y'all can just drop your containers here. I'll keep track of them and you can pick them up and there you go.
Yeah, there's stuff out there, both in the warehouse space and the yard space. I mean, people have entered the market like secure space. It's overflow that you can kind of rent space on demand. And in the warehouse market, I know there's one Flexi and another one Stored that I think STORD that just came into the marketplace. So those are creative on-demand solutions that you can use. But
I guess you can't transload though, right?
You can't. Well, with some of that on-demand warehouse space, you can, but for what we do, we don't want to do that. I mean, we want to see it. Every transload we do gets photographed, so we want to have a little bit more control over it.
I would want some too, because you wouldn't know where your shit's going.
Exactly.
So Baskin, do you have any creative, this is the most creative stuff I ever did, like something real cool? Like, did you lease out your house, Baskin? You did, didn't you?
What's that now? You lease out my house? Yeah, absolutely. I'm putting pallets in offices now. So,
I can totally see you doing that. You'd be like, I got a great opportunity for you. I got this big ass garage.
Got some great roof space too. But no, it's you do what you can with the clients you have, and again, right now it's an interesting time when the market gets really tight. Everyone starts flocking for price, and it's about protecting your existing business that you have, especially in the ocean market right now. It's absolutely insane. And, you've got the lines canceling contracts and canceling space and flopping that allocation over to spot market pricing just so they can capitalize on the market right now. But, I'd say sometimes keeping it simple, and I think he's going to have a heart attack when I say this, but sometimes keeping it simple and not trying to do too much is actually better in times like this, and not creating that complexity. There's certain things that are happening. Like you look at LA, Long Beach, that's a real ticking bomb there. I mean, there's no real estate for that port to grow to. There's no policy movement that's going to allow them to take more space near Long Beach. The real estate's way too valuable on the coast. And you look at all the trucks on the road. So, creative solutions are probably 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 years out, where how do you go out to like Palm Springs and get a big plot of land and build a rail spur so that every container comes in, takes all the truck traffic off the roads in LA proper, and we pick all the over the road cans up out there, or at least can transload the intermodals out there, and get containers out of the city, so to speak. But your vessel size.
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, fine, we'll just go 50 miles outside, get the hell out of the city, and
it solves a lot of problems. It creates some, but it solves a lot. But the trick you're looking at is it's political will to do it. You have the not in my backyard movements that stop things. It's California. I mean, we vote on something every 8 weeks here, so we can't seem to get our business guy. But this was Texas. I see we got some Texans on the phone today. Texas is a little more favorable for business.
Chandler's like he's based out of Dallas. He's one of my best friends. He's like, just bring everything here. Like Texas, yes.
Well, I think that's already happening.
Texas.
I think half of California moved to Texas, unfortunately. The Texans, but
they did.
Be careful what you
I was
wish
the dumb
for.
one that came the other way. So
Right. But I think that I think this is like such an interesting topic to me because all right, real talk. Beyond the pandemic, I think that congestion at the ports was already a hot topic, right?
absolutely.
What's like what's the solution, or actually what's the biggest problem for people who never have done anything to ports? They don't even know. They just see the articles and they're like,
I think,
oh,
one thing I
congestion.
don't think people really take into consideration is the size. Brian mentioned the size of the vessels, right? So when the vessels were 10,000 TEUs, it was easier to process it. The labor, the real estate, everything, you could get it through the pipeline. And now you're bringing in 20,000 TEU vessels, but the pipeline is still the same, and you're trying to move double the volume
Bottleneck
through there in the same amount of time. And then, you've got labor concerns to deal with, and you've got, your infrastructure of the roads. And so, that's not doing any, we think that that's efficient, right? The steamship lines are using the bigger vessels, and there's less vessels on the water, but it causes issues in a lot of the ports on the throughput.
Okay. So,
You
go
have
ahead,
to-
Baskin.
Well, no, I would tell you it'd be a good experiment, but I kind of have this vision of the Sopranos, intro, you're driving down the Jersey Turnpike and you're taking pictures of Jersey, but
True.
out here in LA, you take the drive down the 110 to the Vincent Thomas Bridge and you're like shooting your camera on either side, and it's just stacks of containers. So if you pretend you're a driver going to get one container and there's like a million of them down there and you're just trying to get one, and it's in the middle of that stack, but like 10 on top of it, or in the middle of, you have to move everything. The ports are pretty efficient and get to them, but it's still a huge issue, right? And you have a 9-mile long stretch of highway there over 2 bridges and probably about 2 to 2.5 miles wide. That's just containers and ships, and it's something you haven't seen. But then you look at America and you look at our infrastructure right now and how little we spend on it, and then you travel to Asia. You go to LAX here and we have like 737, maybe a 747 or a 777. You go to like Shanghai, it's like 777, couple 747s. There's not a small plane in Asia. I mean, every airport, and the volume of passengers and the volume of luggage that go through there, the infrastructure is just so much more developed to handle volume.
Really?
Absolutely. So you look at all that, and you look at what we have here. If we had that kind of volume hit an airport here, we'd be like, what? We'd be standing in line at customs for like 24 hours. It would be ugly. So I think that's a huge point, is that our infrastructure and the spending on our infrastructure. I think I saw a bill was introduced to spend more, on the infrastructure, but the raw materials now are going to be required. So one of the biggest issues right now is steel. Steel is coming from iron ore shortages, right? So the price of steel has gone up so much. So these commodities are pushing out lead times. And again, this like Brian was saying at the start, this recovery is going to take a while in the supply chain because there were already underlying cracks that I think just got accentuated.
Right.
And I think we're going to see some inventory stockouts, and then we're going to see people coming in with the summer season coming in the middle of peak on top of the peak guys. And, just everything's going to be kind of a mess in the next 6 months.
I want to go back to our discussion about your port in LA, and Pete and I think Diaz both had comments that I was thinking the same exact way. So where's Pete's comment? Pete says, will we ever be able to rely on a West Coast Mexican port to relieve pressure in a meaningful way? Does anybody know that answer or guess or anything? It's okay if you don't. I think it's pretty cool though.
I mean, there's a lot of those solutions. I mean, Manzanillo, you can look down as you go down the coast, but the problem is the big ships, they're deep water ports. They're not dredged for it right now. So access and have to set all that up is the problem right now. So that's a big hurdle there. But again, it can be solved with money and time, as most things can. One person asked here, where was it on the thing here? Let me see. There's that one about mall operators don't care as long as they get money.
I saw that too. Philip.
So there's an interesting trend going. The big mall operators, a lot of what they're starting to do, we've seen some deals come out now with some of the retailers going into bankruptcy where the mall operators are coming back and doing leases based on a percentage of sales, not a fixed lease cost. So that's been an interesting shift in that model, so that the store wins, the landlord wins. So it's helped the retailers control cost and do that. So,
what do you need for a facility to truly be a warehouse, though? Like, because I just started thinking about that. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit on topic. I'm going back to our warehouse space topic because I think it's so cool. And the port, by the way, the port topic just sounds like almost like a banging the head against a wall topic. Like, we ain't going anywhere with that. And the warehouse topic, I feel like we have more areas of opportunity. It's kind of a little bit more flexible. But for all the, with the pandemic, a lot of commercial properties became vacant. When you assess an actual property, what do you need for it to be a proper warehouse facility? Like,
I would tell everyone the first thing I do when I see a warehouse, it's just pure cost, right? You want to get rid of them, right? I mean, they're not generating revenue. They're not increasing profitability. They're generating cost. And so the kind of the more you have in inventory, right? The reason you have them is for continuity of supply to your customer, to your factory, or whatever it is. So obviously there's a tipping point there. But when you look at warehouses, I would say it's different by commodity and different by type. So if it's e-com, ideally you want tall facilities. You go to Singapore and look at warehouses over there, they're very tall and they're multi-level and they have elevators and things like that move freight around. So you get a lot of density per square foot, which is a good thing. And the revenue you can generate per square foot as an operator is a positive. But if you come here and you're looking at tires or things like that, or bulkier commodities, then you might want lower clear heights because you don't want to be paying for tall space you can't utilize, or you use tire racks or things like that. The other big thing that really goes unnoticed in warehousing is really the cost of capital to start one up. So just going into a blank sheet of warehouse, you have, cost of putting Wi-Fi networks in, cost of security systems, cost of your cameras, yard management. You may have to put gates in, fencing, then your racking cost, if you're going to rack it, and there's different storage solutions. And then if you're going to be a high volume warehouse, you have conveyor systems and all those type of things and warehouse automation.
Because to me, I was like, yeah, you just knock out some walls and we can store some shit here.
Yeah, that is
and you're like, no, actually, there's more to it.
Then you get the bill. And that goes back to the other thing. There's this big concept of outsourcing warehousing versus insourcing or warehousing,
right?
And having a multi-tenant facility versus your own facility. I mean, when you really boil it down, there's very few times that a multi-tenant warehouse is going to be cheaper than doing it yourself per se, with the exception of having to carry the lease on your books and things like that you can do differently if you outsource it. But the problem is, like everyone on here, most people have their behavioral metrics as an organization relating to sales and everything very much end of month, end of quarter geared. So the problem in a multi-tenant facility is unless you have someone who ships at the first of the month and someone at the last of the month, there's really a hard time.
I didn't think about that.
To have the labor balance. So you can't share labor.
We're going to be tripping over each other is what you're saying.
Tripping, you're going to be running overtime. You have
people
all this
going to be
stuff.
waiting to come and go. Oh.
Exactly.
He says, well said, Brian, warehousing is a commoditized industry. Excess capacity is costly and MHE equipment. Racking is costly, and so is the breakdown point. What's MHE equipment? What does that mean?
Material handling equipment, forklifts,
Man, you warehouse people are just as nerdy as we are in trucking.
I tell you, we come up with all sorts of stuff to confuse everybody. It's great, We can go deep on the acronyms here. Then you get to the contracts like you and I know. We have fun with those, right? So
we do.
Understanding all the different limits of liability and insurance requirements, those are fun conversations. So.
And then, if this happens, or if this is the commodity, if this goes on, no. But you do literally, when you have a warehouse added to it, it does become more complex to think through all the risks, all the dynamics, because you get so many people touching the goods versus full truckload. What do we have? We have a pickup, we have a delivery, we have a driver. And it's easier, but with warehousing, it's just, there's so much to think about, but it also makes it more exciting for freight nerds too.
Absolutely.
So Brian Baskin, one more question for you. When I say the word chassis, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Just like first thing.
Don't exist.
BK, do they exist? Is there a fight over chassis right now?
They exist. there's a fight. We own some of our own chassis, which is awesome, and it helps our efficiency and it helps our maintenance, overall cost. There's so many advantages to having your own private chassis. We own a lot of 2040 sliders too. So if we go terminate a 20-footer, then we can pick up a 40-foot container and we don't have to be running around. But overall, there is a chassis shortage, whether you're talking LA, Long Beach, Chicago, Memphis, many of the rail hubs, they're grounding things now because there's no chassis to put containers on. And, one of the things I was talking about earlier today, to put it in perspective, I don't know exactly how many containers come into the United States, but say it was about, 3 million a month, and that gets increased by 20%. That's an extra 600,000. Like, you need drivers and chassis and yard storage and all this. And on top of that, the increased dwell time that is happening in the industry now. So before, you went and picked up a container in LA, you took it to Ontario and delivered it, you went back and you terminated your container. That average dwell time was like 3 days. And now, because of the termination appointments that are required, sometimes it's 7 days on average before you get to terminate. And some steamship lines that are not operating efficiently and for various reasons, are not allowing you to terminate. We've had containers in our yard for 30 days. So that's the container, that's the chassis. And where do you get the space and where do you get the additional chassis from?
Yeah.
Well, the best part he's got is, in the peak season during retail season last November, December, a lot of the retail warehouses were blown out. So like I said at the start, when we had the retail window to pick up is normally like a 3-day window. Well, they went back and expanded to 7 days. So as a warehouse, you'd have to have the order picked on day one, and we're sitting there staging that freight. So if the drivers were late coming in, the freight's sitting there, then you have the next day's orders dropping. And so your floor space required to stack up in peak season became this huge task to manage all that. And then at the same time, Brian knows in LA, they've instituted appointments for empty containers now, and those never line up to when you need to pull a full in. And so if you have a chassis and you have an empty, they kind of want those back because they want to get stuff off the port. But now you have to set an appointment, take the empty back, drop it off, and all this. So there's a whole bunch of costs that's come into the supply chain just in the last 4 months because of this.
And human capital too, right, Brian? That's one thing people don't understand is we got people, they're hitting refresh like all day long trying to get an appointment to return an empty.
Right, right.
You got to double your staff to try to make all these appointments work.
Oh, and by the way, if you can't reach us, we don't answer our phone and the gate's closed, whatever. Oh, you're still paying the detention and demurrage bill. Mm-hmm. It starts clocking as usual. So
we had one steamship line. I think the email came out and it said, this is on the import side, not terminating containers, but they're like, if your container's not been here for more than 30 days, we're probably not going to respond to you. We're going to prioritize those containers that have been here for more than 30 days.
Oh,
yeah.
Which is kind of ass backwards. I know, like they're thinking, first in, first out, but it's a little bit ass backwards. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So to take a step back, all right. So let's say I'm an investor and I have a whole bunch of money. Kind of like buttered bread. He's very, very rich. And so I'm like, where should I invest my money? I'm going to go out and buy a whole bunch of chassis and then I'm going to lease them out. Problem solved. How much do chassis cost? And then where do I buy them? And is there like a wait for them or can I just buy them?
You can get them in the marketplace right now. I mean, it's not terrible. You can do long-term leases on them, like a 2-year lease on a chassis, which is a pretty good deal. And those chassis leasing companies, will help with maintenance. But for us, like in Oakland, we have a mechanic in the yard. He pre-trips them every day. He checks the taillights. We've got new roadworthy tires on them. So for us, owning some of our own chassis is good. There's a reason the steamship lines got out of the chassis business 10 or so years ago. And then that's when these leasing companies came into play. But we are the only country in the world that has this ridiculous chassis system. Everywhere else, even if you go north of the border to Canada, if you want to be in the drayage game, you own your own chassis, you maintain your own chassis, you go to the port and pick it up. And here we're dealing with this absurd system. So if you could just do a cleansing and every drayage company had to own their own chassis, I think the world would be a better place. But
why don't they own their own chassis?
because I don't know what percent, maybe 90% of the drayage world is comprised of owner operators, and they simply don't have the money to be going and buying these. So depends on what market we're in. Like in Oakland, we're heavily company truck. In LA, it's heavy owner operator, and every market has their own nuances. But with it being so many owner operators out there, it's a very fragmented market, and they're not flush with cash to be going to buy these things. And if you're running 2 trucks, like where are you going to park these things, in your driveway at home?
Point. Well, I park them in Baskin's driveway, but yes.
Yeah.
There's a living wage issue going on too, with the drivers, and Brian's probably seen it in LA a lot, but the number of turns, the drivers get paid by trip, and as the ports slow down, congestion's gotten worse. You were probably, if you were on a West Side dray provider location, you probably could get 2 turns a day, 2.5 turns a day out of a driver in a shift. And now you're probably down to 1.25. You start talking about the IE, it's basically 1 trip a day. So you look at the operating cost of that truck. I don't know, Brian, what do you guys use for a number? $700 a day for a driver in a truck to be break even. So if you put a little money on it for the trucking company and whoever's selling it, you're about $900. So if you can only get 1 trip a day, well, there's your dray cost, right? To go out to a warehouse.
Yeah.
So 2 trucks.
And good luck getting $1,000 a day for 1 delivery to Ontario. I mean,
right. The market's so under costed right now, and that's what's getting exposed right now too. Is the drivers are like, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to go to work today. And then that's that whole living wage, labor, human capital piece with COVID. There was a big hit in the longshoremen, which really is what got LA into the problem when we were 60% capacity and the ships are backing up. So this whole concept of social justice, living wage, trucking wages. I mean, it's easy for big guys to say, I'm going to pay you $400, but if the guy's getting 1 a day, he can't even operate the truck for that. The trucks are going away.
And get this happens often, right? In the owner operator market, there's 12 terminals operating in LA. Well, say one of them sucks today and the line is, 1.5 miles long. The owner operator is like, I'm not going there. I'm not going to get that one. I want to go to this other terminal that's operating better. And then guess what? That terminal just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yep.
And then your container is in what they call a closed area, or it's buried or whatever. So it just, it goes on and on and on.
That's his example. When you hear that closed area argument, that goes back to that. The bigger the vessels are coming in because they're offloading so many cans now, it's blocking off ports of the yard because they don't have places to put it. That's a large part of why they block those areas. So we're creating problems that we don't have necessarily. We're not working the other end solution. So it's kind of like solving world peace at some point. So
whenever we talk about ports and containers, I always think about that show, The Wire. Did you guys ever watch that? They have 1 season of ports. And okay, never mind if you haven't watched it. It's good. So question to back up a little bit. So let's say I'm an owner operator. And I've decided that I'm going to jump into this lovely shitstorm going on in Southern California, and I'm going to lease a chassis. And I figured, like, it's just like when you do a rental car, they keep their cars up, and I just look for scratches and I just go, right? Is it similar to that? I can just lease it like a rental car, and what should I be watching out for? And BK Zeke, you can let him know, but he has all your pictures too. You can tell him if you want to show any pictures or anything. Okay.
Well, first we'll start with the owner operators and the what they would do in the port. So there's on the East Coast, they call it the gray pool. On the West Coast, in LA specifically, it's the pool of pools. So you've got different leasing companies that all have their chassis there, and you go to pick up this lease chassis, and you can inspect it, and the driver goes around and looks, he checks the tires, checks the lights, and make sure it works, but that's about it. And then many of these, I don't know if he's got the pictures from the Oakland email that I sent, but like there's mismatched tires, Some of them are bald. Some of them are retreads.
Yeah, nice.
And you got to. Oh, there you go.
Zeke's showing a picture.
You got to take the best one that you can, and you can't sit there
what
all
do you see
day.
here, PK? For those who are just listening,
Oh,
and they're working.
this is a new chassis.
All right, so we're looking at a new one right now. It looks nice.
So that's a Port X chassis.
Color.
And then if you go back, that's from a lease chassis, and you can see like the tire on the left in the back is different than the tire on the right, and they're not.
It's like it's got a lower tread, right?
Yeah.
On the left.
Which
is what I would do. I'd put the nicer one on the outside, so you'd think I'd nice tires.
So now let's say we get this out of the lease pile, and we're gonna, we're taking that, and we got our container, and we're gonna be taking it down to San Diego to make a delivery, and you get a flat tire on the way. Well, we have to pay roadside assistance. We have to pay for the new tire. We've got to get it fixed.
Oh, boy.
Oh, guess what? We missed our delivery appointment. Our customer's pissed off. We got to take the thing back to our yard, get it reappointed. Like all of that stuff is on the trucker. So again, it goes back to why don't we just all have our own chassis and get rid of this stupid pool system? But that's the reality of what we've got going on.
Or I wish that people would negotiate so that there was more liability on the lease, the lessor, because I have seen these agreements, and I make them warrant that it's road worthy, up to DOT standards, including the tires. And if it isn't, they have to be liable. But then I have to rely on the drivers to like do the check and take pictures and shit, because otherwise. It's a little harder for me to prove it wasn't roadworthy. Well, but go ahead.
And here's something else that comes into the mix is, say you've got a rail one, right? So say we're not in LA, but say you go to the UP in Denver. Well, you've already got the container is mounted on the chassis. So unless there's a really, really big problem, like, do you really want to wait for an hour and a half? Then you got to get in a flip line, and they got to flip your container to another chassis. And like, who wants to wait around for that shit? Especially when, as Brian mentioned earlier, a lot of these guys get paid per move. Like, I don't have time for that. I got to get on the road and get going. So, the port and the rail work in a little bit different ways.
Oh, the freight coach just showed up, Chris Jolly, which means that Butter Bread might show up maybe because Chris Jolly's here. You're late, Chris Jolly. We were just talking about warehousing, and we really nerded it out. We loved it. Baskin knows everything. He's definitely the warehouse genius. And now we're talking about chassis, which I want to talk about. And Jolly saw it as well on LinkedIn. I posted BK's from Port X. He has a picture that I was like, what the hell is going on in this picture?
Yeah.
And Zeke is like the container that kind of fell. It looks like it fell off the chassis.
Yeah, no, everybody in your comment section was saying, well, geez, the driver didn't do a very good job pre-tripping it. And, did he not secure it, or were the pins not right? The wheels fell off the damn thing. I mean, literally the wheels fell off the chassis as we were going.
That's pretty impressive.
To terminate it. So now can we hold our driver really responsible? I mean, he's going to walk around, look at the tires, make sure the taillights work. He's not crawling under the thing to see if there's, any cracks or anything. But this was literally right outside the Port of Oakland, and the wheels fell off the chassis.
The wheels just fell off while they're, first of all, thank God nobody was hurt, because if they were that happened on the highway and you had 50 cars behind you, and that caused a big ass pileup, and people rear-ended it, which people die when they rear-end anything that's container or trailer related, because the edges, they slide under. There's a whole bunch of messiness. So thank God that didn't happen. But if it had, in my mind, I'm a lawyer, I would be like, someone's got to pay for this.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem fair. Like, how's the trucking company supposed to know that the tires are going to fall off?
Yeah,
you'd monetize that one, wouldn't you?
I totally would. This is why you and I get along. You see me. I'm like, okay, we're turning Baskin's house into a warehouse. I get 10% of everything. And now I'm going to have a bunch of lawsuits targeted towards these leasing companies.
Yeah. Well, the leasing companies are probably going to hate us after this comment, but after this show. But the
wheels are overrated anyway. Tom Burke says.
I mean,
sorry.
the leasing companies do a pretty good job when you do a private lease with them. The problem is when you deal with a pool of pools, for some reason the gray pools on the west or the East Coast seem a little bit better. But when you're in the pools, the maintenance costs too are so high. I read something, whether it's true, not true, this is the estimate that I heard is, to change a tire at the port, these are maintained at the port terminals. It's like $900. So you've got a lot of equipment that ends up stacking up because they're like, shit, it ain't worth fixing this one. I'm not going to fix it right now. Or, there's labor shortage to fix them, and there's, piles of chassis that need to get fixed. So, you'll drive by, if you're driving, by some of the terminals in Long Beach, you'll be like, how the hell there's no way there's a chassis shortage, because you see thousands of them, but maybe they're not they're not roadworthy at the time.
Roadworthy, yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, do you happen to know if I'm gonna lease chassis, not to be I think I know this answer, but I'm gonna ask you just in case you guys think of something I didn't. Let's say I'm gonna lease chassis, which I'm gonna lease them out of Brian Baskin's home. And because that's appropriate. I don't think there are any regulations. Like, I literally can make you sign a contract saying, you're going to lease this. You're going to indemnify and defend me for everything. They may or may not be. I'm not going to warrant anything.
Yeah, especially on the pool.
And I'll give it to you a super discounted rate.
Yeah, especially on the pool chassis. Like, you don't, like, you take what you get, basically. I mean, and for us, we like to have control of those long-term leases. We like to have the chassis. We like to make sure they're maintained. We know that we can use them. But it goes back to, we were talking about real estate. Like, we can only have a finite number of them because, you can't just keep buying them because you have to park them somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that's
true. But in Brian's garage.
Andrew had a question earlier about, is the chassis situation contributing to the warehouse situation, delays there? And it absolutely is, for that exact reason. You have to park them somewhere. And because of that appointment process we were talking about and all this other stuff, if you're getting 100 containers a day coming in that you're transloading, even, you empty 100, you have 100 empties you're having to store until the appointment can be made. So the yards are getting congested. You can't turn the empties out. You're having to go to your drayage provider and say, hey, do you got a yard you can pull some of this stuff out? They're running out of space there because they're pre-staging pulls, doing pre-pulls and all kinds of things. So it's a mess. And it's a mess. Just leave it at that.
Brian, for those of us who are thinking of warehousing, because I thought I've done warehouse leases before, but I'm a little crazy. Like, I think of everything. I'm like, what do I got for parking spots? I don't miss that parking business. But how much space should you have for parking if you're leasing warehouses? Like, is that even...
Completely comes down to what you're trying to do in the warehouse. If you're trying to do e-commerce and you're going to have, 60 people on a shift, then obviously it's a function of how many people are coming, how many people per shift do you think you're going to hit in your peak time? Okay. How do you park it? But also, you got to carry on bathrooms. You got to carry on break room space. All these other things that come into play just because,
air conditioning. I remember that I had to be careful of.
Exits,
and trash too. I remember I had to think through and then people park overnight.
People park overnight.
Sorry, BK.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead, BK. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's your cargo demographic too, right? Are we bringing in palletized goods that are going into racks, or are we bringing in 2,000 cartons, floor loaded, drop containers? You got a drop yard, so there's the cargo demographic is a.
You got to think about too is your productive hours in a day. So if you have an 8-hour shift, you're not getting 8 hours of productivity out of that person. Every time in California, especially with the laws out here, you can't have them punch out until they're leaving, right? So if they're across the building and you're in a 300,000 square foot building, it's a 5-minute walk to get to punch out place. So they're walking across, you're losing 5 minutes there, you're losing 5 minutes back. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if you take 10 minutes 3 times a day, they have 2 breaks and a lunch, right? Or 3 times a day, that's 30 minutes of time that you're losing right there, times what you're paying. So, you're like 7.5 straight up, and then you go back to your fatigue and all those kind of hours. So it's really about 7 hours a day productive. And if you're floor loading containers, it goes down from there, right? And unloading floor loaded containers. So that's a big one. But so it just depends.
So I'm bouncing all around, but that's only because you guys are just like, I'm going to have you guys back on the show as much as I can, because you two have great energy, great knowledge, and you flow together with your expertise.
Good. Yeah, so we got the same name.
Yeah, naturally.
Yeah, that's right.
It's Brian Kempisty. Dad, you're
Kempisty,
right.
but yes.
Damn it!
Damn.
Damn it! V's gonna start laughing at me because he
That's all
knows
right.
I do this all the
You
time.
know, here's
Okay, I'm gonna
here's
stick
a,
with
here,
BK.
here's another thing that really I hate in our
Ooh, do tell. We
drayage industry.
love
Hate is
do
a
tell.
lot of big BCOs and big NVOCCs, and I'm sorry if SEKO does this, Brian, but they try to get their own chassis deals with the pool or the gray pools.
I mean, I would too. I want
Right?
priority, BK.
Because you save, well, it's about saving
Yeah.
money, right? So they're going to save, I don't know, we'll say it's $10 a day. We'll just use a round number. Well, we're going to pay for the chassis for the trucker. So, well, the trucker doesn't have to worry about paying for the chassis because the trucker puts a small markup on the daily chassis fee. But you know, when we get stuck with a bill going to San Diego with a flat tire and the missed appointment and all the bullshit that goes along with it, we don't get any compensation. So that little buffer that the trucker gets to make on the chassis fee is to pay for all of the bullshit and human capital that goes involved when something goes wrong.
Good
And when
point.
these
I never thought of it like
BCOs
that.
and big NVOCCs have their own chassis deals, we almost always turn our back and say no. And the other thing is billing is always screwed up. Always.
How so?
Because we get the bill and the NVOCC gets the bill, and the NVOCC comes back to the trucker and says, well, you got to go dispute it with the chassis company. Well,
Oh my God.
my accounting department has to take time to do that. So this $10 that they saved, I'm burning all of this human capital. And we've just said, it's just simply not worth it. We're not doing it.
Oh my God.
And I would tell you kind of a last comment, I guess, would be if you're a shipper on the call today, you know, get your checkbook ready because it's going to be an ugly year for freight pricing. You're going to see the rates continue to increase. And there is just a lot more human capital, to Brian's point, going into handling every transaction. And it's definitely going to see a lot of move ups. Your ocean margins, where maybe a forwarder would put $200 a box, $150 a box, they're having to put more money on that just to maintain margin. So, you know, it's a problem. We're all figuring out how to deal with it. Part of this is capacity, and that's not an easy problem to fix. There's no empty vessels to just throw back in, even though everyone had all those pictures in Singapore of all the vessels that were parked there, that they're gone. So I think, we like to see rates going up as well.
Well,
I think
I know I saw that driver lineup was thinking exactly what I thought, which it's for me because I'm so trekking heavy sometimes. Like, I see people so excited that like rates are back where they need to be for these companies to be making money, and they feel like they're finally recovering from, especially the same time last year, which is the same time last year. Chris Jolly and Chandler and Amanda Miller and Vitaly will tell you, woo, the industry is on fire.
Well,
so
I got Vitaly over here too. Just had a comment here about keeping the rates. So right now, man, it's getting on a vessel. It has nothing to do with your forwarder. You could be on any forwarder you want to be. It's who has the highest price out there is going to get on a vessel right now, and that's where it's at. So we can do a lot with relationship, and yeah, absolutely. But I would say just listen to your forwarder on a go forward basis.
For sure.
Because it's a crazy market right now, guys. It's not going to get easy in 6 months.
Yeah. And somebody asked in a comment earlier, like, what is the first thing you can do on Monday to help fix your supply chain issues when it comes to, you know, whether it be drayage, transloading, and final delivery? And it's planning. We're telling customers, whether they're NVOs or BCOs, give us a week, give us 2 weeks notice, at least give us 72 hours before the vessel arrives so we can allocate space, we can allocate real estate, we can allocate chassis, we can allocate drivers. In pre-planning in our industry, some people can do it, but others, there's systems issues out there where some companies can't, it will not allow them to generate a delivery order to dispatch their draymen until there's an arrival notice from the steamship line. Well, the arrival notice means that the vessel is already arriving. So those people that are not pre-planning, I call them last-minute loosies, are absorbing an extraordinary amount of soft costs of demurrage and storage because they can't get their shit picked up in free time. It sits there and they're paying all these additional costs. So you want to help us help you. best thing is to get us the notice so we can start planning accordingly. Because I would say
weird balance, BK. And I get to say this because I don't know if you guys, I don't want to put anybody in an uncomfortable position, but what's interesting is this weird balance with customers and with brokers and carriers and warehousemen, everybody, where it's like some of us make money on the spot market. Some of us save money on the spot market, depending on what's going on in the industry. So we don't want to plan too far ahead because we actually do want to throw some of that freight into the spot market. But then again, we're not planning for things like surprise, Easter is going to actually be celebrated more this year than
I think
any other holiday. Like
you go back to the budgeting departments or the procurement departments. I think people will eventually look at soft costs. We always talk about soft costs.
Yes, I do too.
Like, whether it's demurrage, rail storage, per diem. I've had customers in a 6-month time frame. They spent $3 million on soft costs, but yet they were bitching because the trucking company cost an extra $30 per load. Well, They ended up finally paying the extra $30 or $50 a load, and we told them this is what we need. This is the SOP. This is how you plan. We eliminated all of it. Gonzo. So
it's interesting you say that, BK, because I had Ron Kane's been on the show. You know Ron. He's been on the show many times. He's like our mad Tropolis freight godfather, famous shipper in the industry. And he's always said that, sometimes the CFOs will come down on you on your transportation costs, but there's so much cost in making that change with your transportation provider, so much soft cost that people completely forget about. And he spends a lot of time educating his executives on it. Which is hard. So I hear you. That's an amazing point to be making. And it's easy to be like, cut your transportation spend. And we spend all this time dealing with problems and reinventing the wheel and da.
What if your line goes down one time because you've used a cheaper guy at $100,000 an hour?
Yeah, happens all the time.
All the time. Baskin's like every day. When you guys switch up your providers on me every day. Thank you to you both. I want to tell the group that so we have BK who's with Port X, and I will tell you that if you're in Clubhouse and you love Clubhouse as much as I do, make sure you follow him. You're a Clubhouse animal. Port X has amazing Clubhouse calls, and I creep on you guys because you have so much good stuff.
And we love it. It's good. It's fun too, right? It's like happy hour, and you don't have to show your face.
It's true. You can do whatever, and you can whatever.
Where you go to church on
Oh, who's Brian talking to? Was that your mom calling you?
No, that was my Clubhouse going off, actually.
Oh my God. That was smooth. That was really smooth. And then Baskin, you guys connect with him on LinkedIn. He is your warehouse specialist. He is the person to go to, even if you have questions with SEKO, which I think SEKO has so many lines of business. You guys do a lot of stuff. So thank you to you both for doing this. And I really appreciate it. And happy Friday to Madtropolis, and enjoy your weekend. I think it's gonna be nice weather for everybody. Woohoo!
Looking like it.